Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to SmartLogic's webinar, Driving Customer Support with Intelligent Content. My name is Philip Delorme. I'm an account manager at SmartLogic, and I've got the pleasure of having present with me today Joe Gregory, a taxonomy and information systems architect at HP, Leela Advaryu, technical program manager at HP, and Chip Gettinger, VP of Global Solutions at SDL. A few housekeeping items before we get started. The webinar is in broadcast mode. All participants are muted. We'd encourage you to put your questions in the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A session following this presentation. And the broadcast is being recorded. Replay information will be sent to all registrants following today's broadcast. So our agenda today is made up of 5 parts. Myself, Philip Delorme, I'll present a little bit about SmartLogic and Semaphore, followed by Joe, who will go into HP's opportunities, taxonomies, and metadata. Chip will present SDL's content vision, and Leela will present HP's approach to smart content. We'll follow that up with our Q&A session, answering as many questions as we can. So SmartLogic was started in 2006, where we've implemented over 300 large projects. And another noteworthy date is that in 2015, we came out with Semaphore 4.0, which moved our semantic platform over to graph technologies and using international standards. I'm also happy to mention that soon in the coming months, we'll be releasing Semaphore 5. Those that know on the call Semaphore, a little review. Semaphore in a nutshell is that Semaphore has 3 pillars. The first one is that we build and manage semantic models. The second one is that we use those models to enrich, extract, and harmonize your information assets within the enterprise. And the third pillar, equally important, is that we apply those same models, those same semantics to your business problems, whether they be decision support, process automation, regulatory compliance, or knowledge discovery. Now, Semaphore fits in the enterprise, and you can see it in the blue bar right in between your systems applications and your information systems. Those information systems can hold structured information as well as unstructured information. But equally important and valuable to our clientele is that we allow the audience, whether they be content creators, managers, editors, decision makers, but also external to your own enterprise business partners and customers, the ability to add to those knowledge models and make their contributions so that those knowledge models become better and reflect more what they're meant to do. And I think that the reason why so many different industries and large companies with very complex environments utilize Semaphore is because with semantics, changing, implementing new relationships and interconnecting programs in a different way can be just as simple as changing the external model that these different programs share. And with that, it is my pleasure to hand over the presentation to Joe Gregory, who's going to, in part, explain how Semaphore is used within the HP support domain. Joe?
All right, thank you, Philip. Assume you can hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. So my name is Joe Gregory. I've been responsible for build out of Semaphore as a system within the HP customer support domain of Hewlett-Packard. I have been involved with both implementation of the system, the associated integrations with other systems, as well as the actual build out of the data models found within the system. So given the great introduction of Semaphore by Philip, advance the slide. Wanted to provide a high-level context of just how HP is leveraging the solution. And in our case, currently at least, it's about tying, it's tied to information architecture needs in support of HP products. These needs can span a multitude of audiences, such as business operations, managing the content, HP customers, agents, and channel partners engaged with actually supporting the HP products. There are also many channels involved with supporting these needs across both our web portals for customers and agents, virtual assistant, as well as on-product support solutions. As with any information architecture, the idea is to help systems solve this problem of making sense of information resources so that the most relevant information can be connected with human beings ultimately based on context. And under the hood powering these information architecture needs are content metadata frameworks that are ideally suited and designed to best classify and represent your information for systems and connecting people with this content. And again, in our case, it's about connecting people with content in support of HP products. But our metadata frameworks have been significantly lacking in the past, to say the least. Something as basic as operating system vocabulary wasn't aligned across disparate types of legacy content, such as between software offerings versus articles. Topic-based frameworks were either ineffective or non-existent, and certainly didn't apply across disparate types of content. Something like HP support videos lacked any uniform metadata, including product metadata. So this less than ideal situation costs HP, including ineffective siloed experiences for people trying to find the content. Furthermore, our legacy state was not a situation where the frameworks could support what we were attempting to do going forward using the next generation of component content management and data that Leela and Chip will be sharing a bit more about. So before I go much further, I wanted to provide a basic example of our metadata frameworks in action to help ground the audience in just what we mean. So in this example, this basic example, we're showing how specific metadata are in use to guide the system in making a particular article in this case. In this case, you can see it's about replacing an ink cartridge available at a particular point in the customer portal experience on support.hp.com. That said, the use cases being supported by the metadata frameworks are much more elaborate than this basic example, but did want to provide an example to really ground the audience again in just what we mean with our information resources and the metadata applied to support those resources in terms of findability. So this is a diagram of an overview of how our taxonomy management system being enabled from Semaphore are in use across HP customer support systems and audiences. It's very much become the center of the universe for our content to publishing systems as it relates to master data needs. Many of the taxonomies adopted and adapted existing frameworks, such as the framework representing HP products, right? So our starting point was a known taxonomy, as well as operating systems, where we adopted, in that case, the operating system framework for what was being used for software driver tagging and applied that more holistically across other types of content, including legacy articles, go forward data content, as well as videos. And so by having these best-in-class metadata frameworks centrally located and managed in Semaphore, they can be used consistently across our entire ecosystem for HP customer support, which is very empowering. The single source of truth can continually be refined and extended, including ongoing build-out of equivalent terminology from our base taxonomies, along with being empowered to develop ontologies so that we can inform our systems of just how concepts may relate to other concepts, capabilities we've lacked in the past. I will share more about this in the coming slides regarding specific use cases. So the data in Semaphore is actually stored as RDF compliant triples, which is a great standard to move toward as the industry shifts toward use of knowledge graphs in the future. In the case of HP's management of data in Semaphore, concepts are managed within domains that are aligned with the nature of the data, business processes, and governance needs. And since we can model data as ontologies, these concepts may be related so that we can support increasingly sophisticated use cases for our systems. Again, it's about having that foundational system and set of taxonomies in place so that now we can build upon those and creating more elaborate models to support more sophisticated use cases, just to summarize that a bit more. So some example use cases would include, say, an error signature that was returned by the printer's firmware, where the ontology can inform the system of how the error message is actually related to a paper jam context for content, so that just the right content is automatically served up for resolving the product's paper jam condition. Another example would be given a particular context based on the intent detected by the virtual assistant, something I've also called chatbot intents here. So you can think of chatbot and virtual assistant as synonyms in this case. But in this case, knowing the full range of available content available given the intent that was detected by the virtual assistant is also another use case that is being empowered from the data model. This would include targeted step-by-step dialogues authored in SDL that, again, Leela will talk a bit more about in resolving the issue, or even other suggested content like videos. So by having such a tight foundational set of taxonomies stored centrally in the system, we can really start to take the use cases to a much elevated level as far as the value we can get from our systems in support of our customers and agents. We also support a variety of other use cases that are a bit more typical to information architecture needs for sites, such as build out of navigation categories and facets for products and topics. We can even control exactly what our country language chooser experience is based on the underlying metadata representing countries and languages from the system. And as we move along, we can continue to extend these vocabularies for areas including other areas of customer support, such as adopting and adapting taxonomies for social media. We can explore extending beyond customer support into other domains like finance or marketing, and even looking at third-party alliances as far as potentially adapting third-party content into our site from an alliance partner, and having all the ontologies and frameworks in place to support that integration naturally based on the metadata. So to summarize, we basically have now with Semaphore and the taxonomies found within the system, better control over all aspects of our information architecture needs for our sites, such as in this case by product. Before the advent of using Semaphore, while we may have had base product taxonomies, we were never able to develop, say, custom simplified navigation constructs by product as we can today for the site. And the same is true for other concepts as well. So I've taken the same slide and, as you can see, shown how the same concepts can be applied to something like topic, getting the right topic served up based on context and other website type needs in this case, including search. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chip to talk a bit more about SDL. Chip, take it away.
Great, Joe. Thank you very much. Excellent presentation around taxonomy. Would love to talk more about, which someday we'll have coffee about, I think. But so good day, everyone. This is Chip Gettinger with SDL, and I've been with SDL 11 years, and I manage a global solutions team here at SDL. And my responsibilities really are understanding technical requirements for our customers and worked with HP on some of the aspects that we're talking about today. So really at SDL, imagine if all your content was seamlessly managed from creation to distribution in any language and always findable and compliant. This is a business requirement that I frequently hear when working with our customers. And honestly, it's achievable with some of the technologies and the solutions that we're talking about today. And honestly, to pick up on several of Joe's themes around this intelligent content and customer support, what are some of the digital business aspects that we look at when we're working on these kind of adoptions? I think the first thing that we look at is really looking and identifying high value information. And this kind of information or content within your organization has long-standing viability, perhaps frequent revisions, frequent changes. And those could be internal or external, but this is long-standing, long-lived content. And there's high risk associated with this content if it's not delivered properly. To Joe's earlier points around taxonomies and printer information, HP has thousands of different printer models, operating system, and all those kinds of things. It really needs to have the correct information delivered for the context of the customer. And finally, this information has high value. It's critical for your customers and also critical for your business operations. Other applications we see are things like policies and procedures in regulated industries and so forth. So the value of this information is really important to understand from that perspective. The second step we tend to look at is how you can centralize this knowledge with unified collaboration. Leela in a bit will talk more about having a single source of truth. Many organizations that we work with have a variety of places that content can come from. Now, I'm not going to pretend that all your content can be managed in a single place. However, it's by being able to understand the single source of truth where it is, and then the unified taxonomy that's provided that allows the collaboration across your various groups is really key. And Joe, I love those points though about how at HP you can even extend those kind of taxonomy models into other organizations. And really what that helps to do is break down some of the content silos. Many organizations that I work with, while they have digital business deliveries, the origins of the content can go back several years to a print kind of model. So it's breaking away from that. And finally, it's really establishing information governance and really having that information from a global focus. So many of you have customers around the world, and having information relevant for content and localized for their languages is really important as around the quality of the content. And finally, what are some of the gains that you have that you can achieve when you have intelligent content for this adaptive delivery? As Joe indicated, HP really went to a modular or topic-based approach when they went into this adoption. And even getting now into micro content, into chatbots, that's very common. So the characteristics of this content also allow it to be reusable. As mentioned, there's many different printer models and so forth. It's important to be able to reuse content and have semantically rich content as well. One of the side effects that we see is that content can be used for other purposes than perhaps what it was originally written for. So I'm seeing convergence with perhaps knowledge articles, with help files, with other kind of tech note information, emerging that across communications, the way customers use that. And of course, mobility is critical. So customers are accessing information on mobile devices, tablets, and so forth. And finally, many organizations want to have high traceability, audit trails, history, versioning, because we realize that you go through many changes, updates, but you may have to have an audit trail to revert back or also understand why changes were made over time and kind of aim. And really at the core of this is STL Tridion. And when we start to look at STL Tridion, it really does allow organizations to really intelligently create, manage, and deliver the business critical information. And again, at that global scale. So we really help centralize content with synchronizing authoring, reviewing, and feedback, and also really enable definability on any device at any time in any format. And this we do by our integration with SmartLogic Semaphore. And then also provide applications and tools for strong information governance. It's important for customers like HP to establish and build the information modeling, but then SCL helps define and keep the rich audit trail and history of the content of the changes over time. So when we start to look at the solution, and it's a little bit of an eye chart, there's a lot of good information here, is the adoption at HP around structured content management, which Leela will talk about in a minute, which is SCL Tridion Docs, and the ability to assemble and deliver that out in that global digital experience for customers, or the dynamic customer experience, as we call it, DXD for short. And back at the beginning is really the integration with SmartLogic Semaphore for the taxonomy. And Joe said something important is within HP, that is the taxonomy can be shared across organizations. So even if siloed content does continue, the taxonomy allows to have a unification. But moving into, SCL Tridion does provide the ability to automate also translation integration for the multiple languages and the localization required by their customers. So really, kind of in summary, we start to look at what are some of the roles of intelligent content within your business. Probably most important is findability and insights. Many times I'm asked, how can I measure return on investment? How can we prove that these investments, technologies, services, information architecture that we're investing in, is you can measure improvements and how quickly customers can find and use information. So by having intelligent and semantically rich content provides much more contextual experience for users. The other thing is the ability to support the Internet of Things. Again, as mentioned, many types of devices are being used across the customer experience. Another area really is to provide contextualization and to provide knowledge. It's very important for customers to have relevant information and have that dynamically delivered for them, so that highly structured content does provide that capability. And finally, what we're really seeing at SDL is the creation of intelligent knowledge hubs. Many organizations have what are called knowledge portals or intranets and so forth. And this kind of next generation intelligence of content and taxonomies and content management and delivery really does help support the customer self-service, because ultimately we want our customers to get the answers they need quickly and to be able to give the 5 stars thumb up that they were able to solve their problem really efficiently. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Leela, who's going to talk more about the actual rollout of smart content at HP. So Leela.
Thank you, Chip. Hi, this is Leela. I'm a technical program manager at HP. I've been leading the smart content program and delivering them to downstream systems. Okay, here we go. A lot has been spoken about taxonomy and smart content by Chip and Joe. I just wanted to provide an overview of what it does. Smart content actually provides dynamic, accurate, relevant, and specific content. It's important to specify all that because it is so important for us to deliver specific content to solve customer problems that agents and service technicians help. So this is to help solve customer problems efficiently. Smart content is delivered to users based on their needs. It doesn't matter how they access or initiate the transaction. We deliver content using websites, chatbots, mobile solutions, or even tools such as HP Support Assistant. The goal is to make sure the content is in the hands of folks that need to solve the problem. So what is the problem? What was the problem that we're trying to solve with smart content? Earlier, we delivered static monolithic documents, humongous documents. They could not be applied across many applications. They had to be duplicated and tagged for different channels. Localization was minimal. Imagine tagging a 300-page document with lots of metadata and delivering it to different channels. So it was really cumbersome and inefficient. So what are we doing with smart content? We're able to build specific, structured, and reusable pieces of content and deliver these bite-sized chunks consistently and dynamically, and also contextually relevant to downstream systems so they can help the customers. It's also scalable for future business needs. So the end solution is smart content. It's adaptive content and intelligent content that we are able to deliver to users. They can apply it based on their display capabilities. It's up to date and it's adaptable to new products and features, and it meets localization requirements. And it targets specifically to the issue that a customer or a user is trying to solve. It's also readable for machine and humans. So if you can notice, we deliver a huge book currently, and we have decimated that down into little topics. Smart content is delivered for mostly all the HP products that you can see, printers, laptops, workstations, desktops, and we use the landscape of systems over here that you can see to deliver the content to agents, service technicians, virtual agents, etc. We are authoring our content in SDL Tridion docs. We are tagging the content with smart logic. We're tagging it with the right metadata and taxonomies that Joe just presented. We're able to translate and localize it with SDL ETMA. Indexing and searching content is available using Elasticsearch. And we publish the content to anyone who needs it downstream via SDL Tridion docs, SDL Tridion DXT, I'm sorry. And we have built a bunch of services in-house called Knowledge as a Service using AWS, and we deliver them to downstream systems that is accessible by agents, service technicians, and virtual agents and mobile devices, so they can help the customers solve the problem. Wanted to show you an example of how the experience has changed from before to now. Before, this is a control panel message document, and before it was a huge document, a 300-page document. It was delivered as a PDF. It contained 300 plus error messages, and each error message has a reference to many repair and replace procedures. So the support experience has been significantly longer while the agents or service tech searched or combed through this 300-page document for relevant information to solve a customer problem. So afterwards, what we've done with smart content is we are able to deliver this content for a specific error that's been asked for by an agent or a service technician. An error code has been passed back to the system, and we are able to trace the specific problem and provide the content back for that problem to the device of their choice. So it's a small bite-sized chunk of content that's delivered to them. Another example of this is the chatbot that Joe talked about. With the legacy systems, we were displaying large sections of support documents in the chat window, and users had to, or agents or customers had to scroll through the content and look through the links and to search for relevant information for them. But with the data dialogues, we are able to send small chunks of options and steps, which is more a natural dialogue like, and it's served as topics so customers can solve the problem better. Smart applications also use smart content to recommend solutions to the customer. These smart applications determine the error state of the device by obtaining product telemetry. So product issues are identified via error logs and some pattern recognition. And a technician is sent out to solve the problem only after we identify what the error state is, and we pull the right content from the smart content knowledge base, and we combine the information and send it to the service technician, and then it determines whether a service technician needs to go out and solve the problem or not. And also, if it is required for the technician to go out, we also send out the recommended part information. So he has all the information that is required for precise troubleshooting. It saves time for the field engineer to be successful, and diagnosing before dispatch is better. HP enables publishing content to multiple audiences in multiple languages and multiple paths. For example, the 300-page document is delivered to certain portals or it's used in box. But there is also a need for bursting, more importantly, bursting that same monolithic document into smaller topics, and they're delivered via services like the knowledge services that we've built, and also letting users or customers know about the service technicians know about the parts that are required to solve a problem. So we are fully automating the bursting of it, and we're also making sure the same content is available in different formats for different audiences. So there is a dual experience path. This provides you with a perspective of how the content is organized. A service manual or a control panel message document, like I've mentioned, has, for example, about 300 topics, 300 plus topics, and each topic is delivered in 17 plus languages. So imagine tagging each piece of content with metadata, right? When this piece of content is requested for a specific language and error code, this tiny little red bar is what is sent to the agent or the service technician who's trying to solve a problem. So imagine somebody going through a service manual looking for that little red bar. It takes tremendous time, a lot of time. Also, somebody for an author to author the content and tag each blue bar and red bar with the right piece of information is really time consuming. So what we are doing with this is it's smart content is helping manage the content better, and it's able to tailor the delivery of the content based on the error that an agent or service technician is coming to look for to solve a customer's problem. So we are able to deliver these specific pieces of information dynamically. It's a big cost savings for HP. We have seen really good success in all these following areas with the Smart Content program. The Smart Content provides us with the ability to deliver micro topics which are specific to the user's context and experience. And it also establishes the single source of content, provides consistency and communication, and to reduce costs. We've been able to improve a diagnose before dispatch anywhere in the range of 5 to 15%. Chatbot success rate is ranging between 50 to 25%. Translation costs have reduced because of the way we manage the content. We've improved automation. The timeliness of the content delivery definitely has improved because we publish smaller bite-sized chunks and dynamically. We've also improved mobility and also improved the first-time fix. Overall, this has been a great success. That would be the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Leela. I'd also like to thank my other co-presenters, Joe and Chip. We'll now open the floor to questions, and I'm sure there are a lot because we covered so much content. Thank you so much to my contributors. unification, taxonomies, personalization, right content, right time, and consistent user experience were just some of the things that I kind of jotted down on this presentation. I'm sure that we've got a lot of interesting questions, and Kelly from SmartLogic's marketing team will help me start us off. Anne?
Thanks, Phil. Yes, we do have some questions. It look like some good questions. I'm going to start with the first one. How did HP build their content model? In other words, did they build it manually? Did they import an existing or use a pre-built kind of taxonomy? I think that probably goes to Joe.
Yes. So we have been developing what we call a unified content model based on the DITA standard within HP. We had prior, I guess, homegrown standards in our legacy content systems. Now that we're adopting DITA, we're able to create a unified model based on that standard for development of all of our content going forward, as it will be manufactured from SDL. So that's the story with that.
And Joe, to add into that, you mentioned DITA. It's XML standard organized by an organization called Oasis, and SDL is a member of that. And so we have full, robust support for the DITA XML standard for information modeling. And that's what HP was able to build off on top of to do the integration with your taxonomy and everything. So it was a brilliant mix of industry standards along with some of your uniqueness for HP to maintain that standard.
Thank you, Chip.
Sounds good. Thank you. Okay, we have another question here. We have many questions. Can you, this is a good question. Can you speak to the change management process that you put in place with the content creating, oops. Oh, my apologies, my question panel. Okay, here we go. Just, it kind of blew up. Can you speak to the change management processes that you put in place with content creating groups to move into this paradigm? How easily did content authors adapt to any changes in tools or processes that you put in place? That was a question. I'm not sure, would that be you, Joe, or Leela, maybe one of you?
That would not be me on that question.
Not be you.
I can speak to it. So we obviously every company goes through an MOC process. There is a team that takes care of onboarding, which includes training of the authors and working on the content, basically. We are in the process of doing that. We've already started, some groups have already started doing that. We're in the process of the MOC, so we're in the implementation of the MOC. It's working fine. The training, we haven't seen any big challenges in training the authors as such.
And to add to that, Leela, I would say that HP, you've done a great job in educating, moving into your authors into topic-based authoring. What we find at SCL is many of our customers, the authors today are trying to author in topics, even inside of documents. So there is governance needed, as you mentioned earlier. I think the other aspect of change management is really communication. It's important to communicate successes, challenges, both to your other authors, to your executives, and I see a lot of our customers do that through either wikis or informal situations or more formal situations on social networks within the company. So, just a few thoughts there.
Thank you, Chip. Another one here, I think this one's definitely for Joe. Joe, can you talk about the effort of developing the taxonomy, and also maybe talk about some of the skill sets or people who contributed to that within HP?
Well, as I think with any taxonomies, the nature of it, there are a variety of inputs that come together over time. For us, it was a hybrid of, like I said, adapting and adopting existing frameworks and using those more holistically across disparate types of content. As you build out those base frameworks, though, there is an ongoing process of continually informing the system of semantically how things are described and related. There's an ongoing set of sources that feed into that. I'll start with Virtual Assistant. So I had mentioned previously that Virtual Assistant, we have the associated intents actually reflected in our model and related to content metadata. So by having that set up, we're set up well to start to leverage, in this case, some of the keywords and synonyms the virtual assistant is learning about with regards to these intents. So if you have an intent about resolving a paper jam, well, part of what the virtual assistant is doing over time is learning how people describe that, right? And so because we have this naturally modeled in Semaphore, we can begin to mine some of those equivalent terms and bring those into our model to support broader needs beyond virtual assistants, such as traditional search, auto classification, and so yeah, so that's an example of using virtual assistant. Of course, you have some of the more traditional sources like search logs. Of course, the nature of the content itself plays heavily into how you build out a set of terms representing the content. So part of our story was, for example, we established initial metadata frameworks. We had actually consulted with Early Information Science a number of years ago and helping us get started with that. But we leveraged that starting point for our topic-based framework and exercising it against the base of legacy content and extending the terminology, the taxonomy terms accordingly. As it relates to that legacy content, we're actually positioned as well in a really exciting opportunity moving forward of actually learning how our authors have been describing these concepts. So take the case of paper jam. We have a base of content, legacy content, across a variety of products that are in support of this concept of paper jam. We now have the ability to take that base of legacy content, run it through a text mining solution, and start to learn how our authors have been describing this concept of paper jam, capturing the equivalent terminology in our model. And as a result, we're set up pretty effectively to start to predict how authors will be describing this concept of paper jam going forward in data, and as a result, start to provide assisted tagging to authors. It's like, okay, we know the nature of what you're describing already. The system can auto-suggest terms, or a term in this case, paper jam. So we're able to, through that process, build in even more consistency in how we apply these terms to content going forward. So I know it's a little winded, but hopefully that provided some context based on the question.
That was excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have two questions that are pretty similar here. How long did, from modeling to implementation, how long did it take HP to get the first model deployed?
Can you describe what you mean by model?
Well, I can't, I'm only reading what the question says, but I'm going to say, I would say, a taxonomy, your first, ontology taxonomy.
Yeah, so we spent about 6 months researching how we wanted to approach our topic-based frameworks with the engagement with Early Associates, and this was just in researching the needs across the span of legacy content, the groups, the business groups involved, some other aspects of our culture that sort of were factored into that approach. But then from there, like I mentioned, it was about exercising that initial framework against the base of legacy content and learning how effective it was, where we needed to extend the framework. And so we've got a lot of legacy content, right? And so to actually retrofit all this tagging effectively, and we didn't have auto classification capabilities. This was very editorial as far as reviewing, you know, what were sometimes rather monolithic documents. engaging what were the key topic contexts being represented from these documents, and then actually applying that framework, or like I said, extending the framework as necessary. But that process went on for multiple years, actually. We had pretty dedicated resources engaged, but we're talking about hundreds of thousands of documents. And that was actually a prerequisite before we could even move on to our new platform, our new portal experience you find on support.hp.com, because we needed to retrofit all of our legacy content with these go-forward taxonomies, right? So that we could begin to build out sites, information architecture capabilities for these sites based on this tagging going forward. So I guess in a nutshell, it wasn't too much effort and time to get started, but actually exercising the models and building them out against the huge base of legacy content is what took all the time, really. And like I mentioned earlier, because of all that work, we're now actually set up well to actually go back and mine some of that content for some of these key concepts, and to become more effective with auto classification and consistently applying the right tags going forward. So there you go.
And I can speak for the content model itself. We've been working on the content model for more than 2 years and constantly refining it. So we have different versions of models that's been evolving over the last 2-3 years. So we are still continuing to come out with new information as the requirements come across. We keep enhancing the content model as we go. So we've been working on it for more than 2 years in conjunction with what Joe's talking about.
And quite successfully. I think this might be for you, Leila. How was the legacy content chunked up? Did you do it manually or did you use automated tools?
The legacy content was, no, we did not chunk it up. We did not chunk the legacy content up. So because the models are completely different, right? We are working with data currently, and we had this monolithic huge document management model. So we have been trying to use the new content model to author new content in the new system, and there has not been much of moving the content and chunking the old content up as it is. It's more about identifying what needs to change, and it's being authored in the new model. So at the moment we see a change that's required in a legacy content, it's moved over to the new model, and it's being authored that way.
Okay.
And Leila, I think that's a great business choice by HP. Other customers have automated some of the conversion for more document-based into the topic component-based, the data XML. It's just going to vary on the quality of your content and so forth. And there are some third-party tools and vendors that can support that kind of conversion if your model happens to fit it nicely.
Right. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Here's one. How is the taxonomy used in the chatbot intent different from the one found in a call center intents? Is there a standard intent framework used, or was there one built specifically for HP?
Well, I can't really comment on maybe what's being referred to with the, actually, can you hear me?
Yes.
I wasn't really, I don't know what's being referred to, I guess, in call center intents. I guess that might take on a couple of definitions. So let me focus on the chatbot side of things. For chatbot intents, and actually, could you repeat the question? I want to make sure I actually answer what they want to know about that, though.
Oh, no, because it just disappeared after I asked it.
Oh, that's okay. So in the case,
I think what they wanted to know was how you're using the taxonomy for the chatbot intents. How you use the taxonomy for chatbot intents, is that different than a call center intent, or was it built for you specifically?
okay.
Right?
Well, so I'm going to infer that for call center, it may be reason for call, for example, and they may be classifying that from a metrics perspective. I don't know. They could take on a couple of definitions, perhaps. But for chatbot intents, it certainly is its own vocabulary that is specific to our virtual assistant, right? And it's separate from our call centers. They may have their own vocabulary for describing why a customer called in, such as the customer called in to resolve a paper jam context, right? And they may have a classification scheme to record the intent of why the customer phoned in to the call center. But this gets into part of the beauty of having what we